Hey, everybody. Welcome again to another Vikings training camp recap slash conversation here live on YouTube. Matthew Coller with you. And we've had so much fun the last couple of nights on these broadcasts with a lot of people watching, participating, having a good time that I wanted to come back again. And I'm only just now realizing that I wore a black shirt in front of my black background. So my head is just kind of floating in front of it. And I apologize for that. Also got the hat on because I have really bad hat hair. And so I just, when I'm out in the sun, I'm just wearing this during camp. And so it's back on. So that's why I look like this. But anyway, so a lot to discuss with training camp in general, but not a whole lot for today, except one catch by Justin Jefferson. And I really want to get into this catch specifically and also into Justin Jefferson in general and early camp, the contract, what expectations are for Jefferson. I also want to take all of your questions, comments, react to everything you got to say. And I had a chance to sit down with Matt Daniels today as well. And I want to bring you that interview at the end of the show as well. It's just audio, but you'll be able to listen to it here live on YouTube. And it's a good time. Matt Daniels is a really interesting guy. We talk about how to evaluate analytically special teams. We talk about leadership and him and his head coaching future potentially and why he wants to be a head coach and things like that. So it's a fun conversation. I will play that for you at the end. And hopefully I'm trying a little new technology. So it'll be, okay. I think. So let's get into it with Justin Jefferson. So earlier today, they were doing some goal line drills, and that was really the only intense thing that they did. The first two practices, when you consider how hot it was and how long they went, how many reps they had, how many plays, that it made sense to have a much lighter day today where the guys were just doing a walkthrough after some individual type of things. And so they do, kind of a goal line where you've got receivers, you've got secondary, and that's it. There's not pass rush defensive linemen. So it's just a 7-on-7 situation with the goal line. And, quarterback drops back, looks for somebody to throw to, tries to get in the end zone. You get the whole deal, right? And Justin Jefferson in this drill went to the back corner of the end zone, and the reporters are standing right near where he's, running toward. So the end zone is kind of right in front of us. And any of you who've seen some of the pictures from Twitter, there's like a line of bushes, and then there's a wall for the stands, and right in front of us is the end zone. So maybe 30, 50 feet in front of us, Justin Jefferson comes flying over on a back corner to the end zone route. He jumps up over Byron Murphy, who has perfect coverage, nothing short of perfect coverage on Justin Jefferson, reaches up over this man and steals Byron Murphy's soul, catches the ball, gets both feet down in the end zone. And, I've seen Justin Jefferson make a lot of good catches. So have you in practice during training camp, in games. We've seen many, many, many great catches. This was probably my best view that I've ever had of one of the obscene, how in the world did he do that? And not only that, but also Chris Carter was out there today walking around, talking to players, and he tweeted about this play. The Vikings tweeted out, if you want to go look at their Twitter and check out this catch, it doesn't really do it justice because one of the things they have to do is the social media account is they have to take tight shots. And because they don't want to show the route combinations and things like that, they know that other teams, pay their interns to watch and see if they can glean anything or whatever. But they have it a really tight shot that shows it. And it really doesn't do it justice. I think you would have need to see a little bit more of the whole route develop for how absurd this catch was. And so I thought, well, that's really the big highlight of camp. And so far for Jefferson and of the day, because it was a relatively quiet day. And KJ Osborne had a nice toe tap in the same drill. They only ran a handful of plays the entire day. So let's just talk about Justin Jefferson, though, because of this catch. I am not surprised, but sometimes we do need to pull back and go, can you believe this? Can you believe this? I mean, there are times where we have just gotten so used to elite wide receivers for this entire franchise. And Chris Carter tweeted, "Hey, one Hall of Famer, to a future Hall of Famer," about Justin Jefferson, which I don't know if Chris Carter says that about a lot of people. But that's the path that Justin Jefferson is on. And you think about just even going back, Moss and Carter, and then you end up with, years later, Stephon Diggs. In the middle is Percy Harvin, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, going through their history. That they've just, it never ceases to amaze me, the type of receivers that this organization has had, and watching it right in front of you, you understand like why this man is the greatest in the world and what he does, because he can make catches like that. I also think that from Jefferson's perspective, that he has handled so many things well, of being the world's best wide receiver, that we don't really think about, because he hasn't given us anything to think about. So he misses a couple of days of OTAs. And I remember doing some live streams where people were like, "Wait, should we get nervous? Should we be upset?" I'm like, "No, not yet. Like, don't overreact or anything like that." He shows up at minicamp, participates fully. He's here in training camp. He is participating in everything that they're doing, running all the routes, making the plays in the end zone like today, not holding in with his contract situation. And I don't want to give him like too much credit for just doing his job. He has no leverage to do a hold in. It's a very different situation than it is with Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter is at a spot where it's just a crossroads and he needs it to be resolved before he can play again. That's not the case for Justin Jefferson. This isn't a crossroads for him for like getting the last contract of his career or something. This is a situation where the Vikings and Jefferson side have, quote, ongoing conversations. I imagine so, because if you're Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, they better keep going. They better not stop until you've got something done if you're the Vikings general manager. But you just have no noise whatsoever from Jefferson about this contract situation. And maybe that means that he's confident something gets done, or maybe he is just truly only focusing on what he's got to focus on to make catches like that. But the way that he approached coming to camp on time, there's no media interviews where he says, "Yeah, I want this much." There's no agent that's leaking stuff out, which I think is something that, deserves some credit to say, because there are agents that love to put whatever they can out to the media. And a lot of reporters are very happy to put it out there, whatever the agents told them. That has not been what's going on with Justin Jefferson. And then he shows up and just reminds everybody in the first couple of days, "I'm the guy, I'm the number one wide receiver." And something interesting I saw today, Steve Weish, who's from NFL Network, was out there. There's always kind of this parade of national reporters that are coming in. This happens at every camp. And yesterday, I think it was Albert Breer was stopping by, and then you see him tweeting or reporting something on the Vikings. And then today, Steve Weish of NFL Network, who is great at his job, major respect for him. And so he's on TV from TCO Performance Center. They have a place inside the building in our media room that the NFL Network people can go and get on TV. They got the whole setup and everything. So I clicked on the video with him, like, "Oh, I wonder what Steve said about today," because they didn't really practice a whole lot. And that was the obvious play that everyone's talking about with Justin Jefferson. And he was talking about year 2 of this offense with Justin Jefferson, and how Alexander Mattison told him kind of an anecdote about Jefferson understanding the defense better and not needing to communicate with Kirk Cousins, but they just kind of knew it, which brings me to this, and would love audience participation on this. What are the expectations for Justin Jefferson this year? Like, where do you put the bar for a guy who has done nothing but raise the bar every single season? And a couple of times, Kirk Cousins has said of Justin, "If you just keep doing this over and over and over, then you're going to end up in the Hall of Fame." And that is completely true. If he just goes for 1,500 to 1,800 yards every single season, he will absolutely end up in the Hall of Fame. That's what, somebody like Devontae Adams has done. That's what Antonio Brown did in his prime. The best wide receivers year after year after year are so consistent. But after what we saw last season, the first half of the year, he is so dominant, just unbelievable pace. And then in the second half of the year, teams changed what they did. And Wes Phillips talked about this a little bit and talked about how, teams in the second half of the year were just what they call like clouding coverage over toward him, bringing a safety over his way, double coverage every single play, more or less every single pass play to try to slow him down in any way, shape, or form. And it actually did work at times. It didn't work as in they just completely shut him down and took him out. But in the last handful of games in Green Bay, yeah, there was cleat gate or whatever where he didn't wear the right cleats. But the New York Giants as well, they forced the ball into TJ Hawkinson, which for them, if TJ Hawkinson catches 10 passes versus Justin Jefferson not catching 10 passes, that's a win for a lot of defenses. I think that Wes was talking about it through the lens of Alexander Mattison, that running backs have to be able to make the opposition pay as well. And Mattison can do that. And he didn't say probably better than Dalvin Cook, but I'll say it probably a little better than Dalvin Cook in the passing game. But with Jefferson, I think there's two kinds of expectations we can set. There is a statistical expectation, which again, in the comments, drop your expectations for him if you want to go catches, yards, whatever. There's also the understanding the defense, understanding how to deal with it for both him and Kevin O'Connell, how to adapt to it, and being a little less concerned about the fantasy numbers and total statistics and a little more into kind of just the idea of effectiveness and efficiency. And because, some of the numbers were driven by circumstances last year. They're playing in a lot of shootouts, and they probably will again this year, but they're playing in a lot of shootouts. They were down in 8 fourth quarters that they had to come back. And if you're not losing, you're probably running the ball more often, not forcing the ball to Justin Jefferson all the time. So the statistics can be different, even though you played just as well. And so I wonder about setting the expectations statistically lower, even if we think he's going to be better. And then that's kind of where I stand. So Nathan says 1,600 plus yards. Deontay is in for 115, 1,800 yards and 12 touchdowns. And that's conservative, he says. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, if you put together back-to-back 1,800, seasons, I mean, I don't even know if I don't think Jerry Rice ever did that. So that would really be something. But in my mind, it's not so much even for Justin Jefferson, those numbers, as much as it is having a complete offense, and he continues to be great within that offense. And if you end up with 94 catches for 1,300 yards, people will say, well, teams slowed down Jefferson more, but it might not actually be true. That you actually might be more effective as a whole passing game on a down-to-down basis, even if he is dropping back. And, I think that there were also some times where they were trying a little too hard, maybe, to force it to Justin Jefferson, not as in Kirk throwing it to him, as in drawing up every play to go in his direction. And the only other option was a check down. And this is not a 4th and 8 thing. This is just in general that it was either Jefferson big or just going to have to throw short, and not having like another layer to the offense. And I felt like at times they did not have that other layer to the offense that they're trying to have this year. And we'll see where Jordan Addison fits in the first couple of days. There's nothing to me that would indicate that he's not going to be good. There's nothing really to indicate that it's a guarantee he's going to be good. So, we'll see. And we'll see how that plays out with Jordan Addison and the weapons, which may make a difference for Justin Jefferson. But I think that when you have a season like that goes so far above and beyond everyone else, and there's a whole offseason of discussion about you and your contract and you're the number one guy and everything else, that every team should have already been going into every game with Justin Jefferson as their focus. But I remember somebody telling me that even like the early in the season, it seemed like some teams were still thinking about Dalvin Cook. And that's not everybody, but still thinking, well, it's the Vikings, you got to stop their run game. And also, like, think about this. The first game against Green Bay, they were completely lost. They had linebackers on Justin Jefferson. That won't happen again. There won't be another game like that. There's going to be nothing but week after week after week on Justin Jefferson. So it does seem to me that that type of attention could take away from his totals, but also add to his overall effect in the offense. And it just sort of is, it demonstrates how numbers can lie to us and why fantasy players are different than actual like NFL analysts and that kind of thing. Alexander says 1,300 yards, double-digit touchdowns. The touchdown number is funny because I saw somebody saying, like, on Twitter or whatever, like, oh, well, Jefferson doesn't catch touchdowns. And I mean, you've got to be trying pretty hard to go out of your way to criticize somebody if you're talking about that. But that's a good example of something that I really don't think is under his control. It's entirely how things play out. I mean, if he only catches 5 touchdowns, but he averages 14 yards a catch and catches 75% of his passes, and Kirk Cousins has a 112 quarterback rating throwing to him, I think that Jefferson had a pretty good year. And so I think that your expectations are, pretty reasonable for him. I mean, even Deontay saying 1,800 again, I think that's not crazy considering there's really no ceiling on Justin Jefferson. And even last year, I remember saying, well, I don't know if he's going to get better, but if he stays the same. And then he did. And then he did even more than he did the year before, which is really crazy to think about. Hunter says, hope he combines for a total 300 yards against the Packers and shuts Jair up. What is that? Combine like rushing, passing. He can throw the ball. So maybe all of that put together. But there's kind of the two conversations with Jefferson. There's, will he do it again? And there's no sign of lollygagging for him in training camp, going out there and competing the same way he has year after year. I thought last year he sort of came into camp with a little bit of a different mentality, as in he wanted to dominate every day of camp. I think that, O'Connell may have wanted him to take it a little easier at times, but he was just mauling people at camp, and then he's doing it again. And that's a hard thing. And we underrate that as well, that being a star of this caliber and never acting like it in any way other than, whatever, going to Spain and having famous soccer players want to meet him, or sitting courtside with LeBron. Like, okay, that's a little different, but never really approaching anything differently than he has from the first training camp that he was in is something that stands out quite a bit from Justin Jefferson. So there's that conversation. There's the, what are our realistic expectations? And then there's the other part, which is, okay, we've said all that, but when's the contract coming? And what's the contract going to be? And how are they going to, get this done before the end of camp? Because there isn't really any buzz at the moment for this contract coming to fruition. And, this is an interesting question. Do you think that Justin Jefferson's agent is waiting for the Bosa contract so JJ can be the highest paid non-quarterback? That could be. I don't know that that's what they're doing. I think that it's probably about just the fact that this is not an easy thing to do. Not an easy thing to make someone the highest paid non-quarterback. With Jefferson, he's looking at what he's done so far in his career and coming out right away in training camp and reminding everybody, like, yep, this is me with this catch. Put that on your social media. That when you are the best player in the league at your position, contract wise, you hold all the cards. And that's hard for the teams because normally the teams hold all the cards. The teams aren't used to negotiating from a position where the player is completely in command. It's normally the player wants his deal. You want to keep him, but you're only going to keep him at some price. And in this case, it's no, the price is the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL and nothing short of that. And that could take a lot of time to work out. And so, will we see that over the next couple of weeks? Will we see it soon? Will we not see it at all? And I think Bland Toast asks a good question here with never bland questions or comments, though. So I appreciate that. With all the injuries we've seen already in training camp, Ramsey, Burrow, Wilson, do you think that Hockenson and Jefferson should push for contracts sooner? I don't know if that changes how they view it or not, but I do think that them going out there when they're up for extensions, more Hockenson than Jefferson. I mean, Jefferson is under contract all the way through the end of next year. If this was next year, it might be a little bit different. And maybe we will get to that point where there is a next year in this situation with this contract, if it just keeps dragging out and dragging out. And maybe, maybe you're right. Maybe they're waiting for other numbers to come about, or maybe he wants to bet on himself. I don't really know. Because they haven't put anything out there about how his side feels. So we only have to go on what Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah said. But I think with Hockenson in particular, that yes, it is a little bit different for him. The thing is that with these guys, with their age, even if either one of them were to get hurt, it would have to be like Teddy Bridgewater level hurt to impact their futures. Even if TJ Hockenson was lost for the season somehow, he'd still be getting a massive contract in the future. It just wouldn't be today. They'd probably franchise tag him next year and then go from there. So it might impact him. It might impact him to some extent, though the franchise tag could still happen in general. It is, from Hawkinson's perspective, though, a little bit on the risky side. And that's why Danielle Hunter's not doing it. But Hockenson is also set to make a lot of money this year. That's the difference between him and Hunter, is that Hockenson is going to make a lot of cash and Hunter is not. But I think from Hawkinson's perspective, he should be pushing, because you are right. I mean, this is a game that you could get hurt at any time. And one of the ways that they figure out the guaranteed money is they look at, all right, if the team franchise tagged you back-to-back years and use their 2 franchise tags, how much would that be? And that's a starting point for guaranteed money conversation. And with a tight end, that might be $25-30 million that you can get guaranteed. That's a lot. That's a lot. And it's a lot of security for somebody. And so I think from his perspective that he should be pushing a little harder, where Jefferson can say, I'll wait till you come over to my side, or I'm talking more from his agent's perspective. He's not saying anything about it, nor should he. From his agent's perspective, come over to our side because we know how badly you want this done. And it's really to the point where Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah can't even downplay it. He's just, well, look, yeah, we want this guy more than anything. So, right. That he's made it quite clear. And what did he say last year? That he never wants to be the GM if Jefferson isn't here? Like, that's a little much. That's a little hyperbolic, but still, you get the point. When that doesn't even sound ridiculous, you get the point. And I think that's going to be hard for the Vikings to deal with, is that Jefferson can really stand strong and not give any concessions to do his deal now, because he's doing them a favor by doing the deal early. And I guess I expect this to play out all the way through the summer. I think in the best case scenario that we get to that little lull after preseason games going into the season, and some momentum picks up right before the season to sign a deal. But I just want to, we've talked for quite a while about Jefferson, but thought it was a good time to talk about him today after the incredible catch that he made. So let me get back into your questions here. Do you anticipate, from Alexander, do you anticipate that one of the 3 contracts will act as a domino and we'll see subsequent contracts get done quickly? I don't know that they have to be connected at all, because there isn't what they did in creating the cap space from moving on from Dalvin Cook and Za'Darius Smith, that they can move as much money into this year as they want. I mean, right now, weirdly, it's like, take a photo, because you haven't seen this in a long time. The Vikings are among the highest teams in terms of cap space. Usually they're all the way at the bottom of that overthecap.com chart, but they actually have cap space right now. And it's not like, oh, well, we have to do this guy's first and then the other ones can happen because of the cap. They can really do all of them together at any point. I don't know that they're connected at all. I do think that the last time there was a bunch of contracts to be done, they were connected. So that was back in 2017, if you remember that. It was when Daniil signed his original deal that wasn't all that good for him. And there was Eric Kendricks, Stephon Diggs. Those deals were connected because everybody signed for less than they were worth because they believed that they were going to win the Super Bowl the next year. And I understand why they thought that, running back the number one defense with, Kirk Cousins coming in, and they thought that there was a window with each other. And that group really loved each other. I mean, they loved playing around each other, everything else. The Kendricks, Everson Griffin, Linval Joseph, Tom Johnson, that whole defense, Anthony Barr, they really enjoyed being around each other. And it wasn't until the next year where the Vikings players started really holding the team's feet to the fire. That was Anthony Barr, who didn't come back until and he supposedly took a pay cut from versus what he was going to get for the Jets, but it was still a top-notch contract for a linebacker that plays the game like him. And it was Kyle Rudolph also, again, saying, look, I'll go somewhere else. I don't even care. I'll do it. And he eventually got his contract extension in 2019. So there was like a shift. And I think right now that these players are happy being Vikings. It's clear TJ Hockenson likes being in Minnesota. He's a Midwest guy, and he's at the Twins game. He's at the Wild game. He's really living up the Minnesota life. But at the same time, like, he's going to get what he's going to get. Like, if you are a team, and the players are usually aware of this, their agents are aware of this. If you're a team that's right on the edge of a Super Bowl, then a lot of times players will work their contracts around that. But this team, and you look at Vegas, you look at what's written in the media, these guys, they are on social media. They know what's being said about their team. They know the expectations for their team. It's not a feeling of, whoa, this could be the Super Bowl. If they ran everybody back, we might see a little bit of that. Like, hey, let's get these contracts done, get them out of the way. We got this window to win. But there isn't really that at this moment. So they can kind of wait and see how it plays out. And when your general manager publicly talks about competitively rebuilding and not, guys, we're about to win the Super Bowl right here, or we're about to chase the Super Bowl, I think that players can be a little more hesitant to say, well, wait a minute. So if we're kind of in the middle of this timeline thing, I'm not going to take any less money. I'm going to make sure I get mine. So there's a little bit of that. I'm not saying that it influences everything, but I think where the team is at does matter to some extent. But if we were trying to figure out what order these things could get worked out, I think the Hockenson contract is the easiest one to do, where we know what he's worth. We know the guaranteed money that other similar tight ends like him got. It's really, if you're the Vikings, do you want to do that or not? The price, you and I could come up with this negotiation. This isn't that complicated at all. Look at the comparables. Look, okay, Darren Waller got the absolute highest. Maybe he's more of a deep threat than Hockenson, or, maybe Mark Andrews a little more all-around player. Hawkinson's not really a blocker. Okay, but he's better than Evan Ingram. Bang, right there in the middle. 15 mil a year, 16 mil a year, something in that range. There you go. Contract, you're a Viking. That we could do. Hockenson, if he wants it, there you go. The other ones, how many years are you giving Jefferson? How much guaranteed for injury and then guaranteed fully? How much does he get up front? What does the structure look like? What year do you plan on competing for the Super Bowl? Because you want to make sure that his cap hits are not that high in that particular year. Go look at AJ Brown's cap hit from last year. It's like $12 million or something, or $8. It was not that much. And Hunter, that one is even more complex because we don't know what the offers are or if the offers will change. And this could be something that the team, waits on, is, do the offers change as things change around the league throughout training camp? Already we're in day 3 of camp and we know quite a bit more than we knew just 3 days ago about where guys are playing and so forth, how certain players are looking. But as you get the pads on, you get the preseason games going, you could see owners of other teams saying, you know what? I'm feeling pretty good. Our coaches are hyping this up. Let's go get Danielle Hunter. So, a lot can still change, and it doesn't feel like any of these things is that close to being resolved. And with Danielle Hunter, we're not seeing him at all. This is completely a holdout, by the way. It is 100% a holdout. I mean, going to meetings and then staying inside the building, if he's even there, it's not like I've seen him. That's a holdout. If you're not even out there doing stretching or anything like that, you're definitely holding out. But when this all gets resolved, no idea. We're going to have to just kind of sit and find out. From Purple Purgatory, off topic, any thoughts on Delvin meeting with the Jets? While the Jets might be putting together an incredible 2020 All-Star team with him and Aaron Rodgers, if those two were together in 2020, they would be the best combination of running back and quarterback in the league. Well, they have Breece Hall is going to be coming back from an injury at some point, and I don't know that their running back room is really impressive otherwise. Having a good passing game will help for sure in terms of their their passing game, but or in terms of their running game, to have Aaron Rodgers, to have Garrett Wilson. I mean, I think that Dalvin Cook, if he took a reasonable role at a reasonable dollar figure, makes sense for a number of teams. It's just, does he really want to do that? And we talk about, how much agents dictate things. Like, does his side think he's worth 10 million? Because I don't think anyone's giving him $10 million. It's more like everyone's looking to get him on a cheap dollar figure and then drop him in as a combination type running back. That's probably what he is at this point. And it just stood out so much. I know we talked about it last night, but it stood out so much when they talked about the consistency of Madison. And it just, sometimes you read between the lines, not putting words in their mouth, but I know what they mean, that Dalvin Cook is not the same guy as he was before. He's still very fast though. So if you paired him with somebody else, that could make for a pretty good running game. But if you're Dalvin Cook, do you want to go to a place where as soon as Breece Hall comes back, he's the guy? And Breece Hall, seems like he is, kind of the next great running back in the league if he stays healthy and recovers from the ACL thing. From Alex, anything interesting from pressers today? Yeah, the only press conference was with Matt Daniels. And coming up here in a few minutes, I'm going to play you the audio of my interview with Matt Daniels one-on-one, a sit-down today at camp, which had a really fun time with, and just a really, really interesting guy to talk with. But, I mean, he talked about just, certain areas they want to get better. The kick returning thing is interesting as well. I asked him in his press conference whether he thought that the NFL would make a change at some point to a different kind of kickoff situation, because this rule is just not good. Allowing guys to wave for a fair catch is just so boring and senseless, and I cannot stand it. And so he was talking about how the league is always changing with these rules. He said it's about 50-50 with new rules, and nobody has to understand rules better than these special teams guys, where they're moving around the kickoffs, moving around extra points, all sorts of different things every year. But it's about 50-50. They try new rules. Sometimes they keep them, sometimes they don't. I was hoping that he was going to give me insight and tell me that the XFL kickoff would come at some point. But I mean, with the special teams coordinator, kind of typical stuff. He said that there is a kicking competition. I don't know that I really believe that there is a kicking competition. It seems like it's probably Greg Joseph's job, and then Jack Podlesny would have to kick himself into another universe if he wanted to actually beat Greg Joseph, because Joseph is a guy that they trust. But he pointed out, he did say this, that last year we went into training camp not thinking too much about the punting competition. We were like, who's this Ryan Wright guy? This big giant dude? That's funny. And then he kicked it 75 yards in Denver and ended up winning the job. From Alexander, does Zeke Elliott have a role in the NFL? Probably. I mean, it probably does. I think that he does, but he's not a guy that you want to give 250 carries to. It's so much of being a running back is just based on circumstance anyway. Having watched Zeke Elliott against the Vikings last year, he was not as quick as he used to be, of course, but the guy is still crazy strong and powerful. And I just think that the way of the future is combinations and mixing and matching 2 or 3 different running backs. And we'll see if the Vikings end up doing that. If they end up mixing and matching with Kene Nwangwu, Ty Chandler, it really has looked like Kene Nwangwu is the backup running back at this point. But I think that is really the way that if these running backs want to in the future have their longevity play out better for them, they should really try to push not so much for owners to give them more money. Jim Irsay made that clear. He's not giving them more money, but maybe just less workload and look for situations or hope for situations, I guess, where they can, be combined with another running back. And maybe if you're a team that commits to something like that, you'll benefit. And that's really what happened in New Orleans, where Mark Ingram had a long career that was pretty successful along with Alvin Kamara, and those two kind of being a very dangerous and effective tandem. I think the team should aim for that in the future. Thoughts on Addison returning punts? He did that in college, but I'm going to pass on that idea. I think returning punts is very difficult in the NFL, and you saw that with KJ Osborne in his first year. KJ was a really excellent kick returner, or I'm sorry, punt returner at Miami, and then was really bad at it. And he's a really good football player, but he was very bad at it. Very bad when it came to actually doing it in the games. Jalen Reagor, Brandon Powell, you want somebody who you can trust back there. I think that right now I might give the job to Powell because he probably, I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. I asked Matt Daniels specifically, how do you even evaluate when you have so few reps? And, he didn't say specifically which guy he's leaning to, but, he talked about trying to give them all opportunities to get a look at them. But I just, I just don't think it's a good idea for Addison to be returning punts. I think he should just, stick to focusing on being a wide receiver and not worry about that part. Normally it's been Jalen Naylor is the other guy who has been back there, I think last year and maybe at the very beginning in the first day when they did some reps there. But Addison might have caught some today, just working out in the beginning of practice, gone back. I mean, he's done it in the past, so he could be a punt returner if he needed to. I just don't like that idea. That's what I'm saying. I think that's a bad idea. Let's see. From I Shot You 99, do you think that Hall has a chance to be the backup to Kirk? Do you think his lack of experience for remaining for third string? Yeah, I don't think he has a chance of being Kirk's backup. Not really, no. I think where I landed yesterday was after he had that it looks like he can actually play football. And at some point he may play really well in preseason. And we have a little bit of a discussion about QB2, but I don't really mean in a serious reporting that he's QB2 way, in more of a fans are excited about him on the internet and want him to be QB2 way. But not in so much of a Kyle Sloter, there's no chance of that way, but more as in even Jaron Hall knows he's not QB2. He's even said that when he was talking to the media the other day. He was talking about really trying to develop this year. He's not the backup. It's going to be Nick Mullins. I mean, he knows the offense inside and out. He is a sounding board for Kirk Cousins. I think you saw that some in the quarterback documentary. So as it's always exciting to have a young quarterback do anything, even have one good practice without pads. But I don't want to get ahead of myself and say that there's a legitimate competition there. It's just the decision that's going to be forced is, do you want him to stay on the 53? Can he earn that spot on the 53-man roster? Some teams keep 2, some teams keep 3. Is he going to make it so they can't cut him because somebody else would pick him up? That, I think, is the real question. And then if you have him for next year, that would be fantastic as your backup quarterback because it's very cheap and it's somebody that you could trust. So I want to play you guys my sit-down interview with Matt Daniels. It's unfortunately audio only because I didn't videotape it, but that's just kind of how my recording equipment works out there. So I'll play that in a minute, but I will also leave room at the moment for any final questions for the night as we go into sort of the next phase, which is fans coming out to practice. And then after that, they put the pads on. It's go time. And then August, I believe 10th is the first preseason game at Seattle, and we are off and running. And even though we know that Kevin O'Connell is not going to play all of his starters, I am really curious about this year being different as far as playing those starters, because last year, are you trying to evaluate Patrick Peterson? No, you know what he is. Are you trying to evaluate Eric Hendricks? No. But this year, go through the roster. How many guys have done enough in the NFL to say, oh, look, you don't have to play in preseason. You're good. You're a veteran. You're a starter. I mean, even Alexander Madison they might give him some reps, but a lot of guys, a lot of the cornerbacks, the young safeties. I'm sorry, I missed a question earlier at the very beginning about Patrick Jones. I have noticed only a little bit of Patrick Jones. Before the pads get on, I don't really look at the defensive and offensive line because what difference does it make, right? So he might look a little more jacked up or whatever. He's mostly been playing with the second team, though. It's been DJ Wanham with the first team. There is a chance that he could make things interesting, though, as far as that race, if Danielle Hunter does not end up playing for the Minnesota Vikings. It just seems to be, with all of these guys, it's hanging over training camp. When will these things get resolved? And as we went into it, there was always a feeling, well, maybe it'll get resolved really quickly, or maybe it will be the first day that we get news on these things, and then bang, bang, like it's all happening, and then we break it down, and then we move on to the season. But it's lingering, and, we'll kind of figure out from there. Any concerns, this from Purple Purgatory, any concerns that if Paul plays really well in preseason that we can't get him on the practice squad and, Hall, you mean, right? And have to carry 3 QBs in a wide receiver starved lineup. Yeah. No, it's not a concern. I mean, if Jaron Hall plays really well, you're good. It's just a typo. You're fine. I figured it out quick. I was like, who is Paul? But no, Jaron Hall, got you. No, it's not a concern, because if he plays really well, then you feel good about it, right? You feel like you've got your future backup quarterback in Jaron Hall, and you see what happens from there. My expectation based on his physical skills, I mean, he doesn't throw the ball that hard. He doesn't have a huge arm. His physical skills kind of say backup quarterback. He looks kind of like a Nick Mullins, but that's a good thing to have somebody as your backup quarterback if they are cheap. If you're paying $800,000 for a backup quarterback as opposed to like $4 or $5 million, that's another player that you can add on your salary cap at some point. And you can have that for a few years and then develop that guy. And you can always see if there's something else there. And if there is, that's really great for you. But I don't look at it as, well, if Jaron Hall makes it, then they have to cut a wide receiver. That could come from another position. Or when you look at their wide receiving core, there are probably guys who might be able to play. And I've got like early indications that some of them can play just based on pad lists running around. And we'll see when the pads come on. But guys who you could put on the practice squad, even a Brandon Powell, who's a veteran, but you can do that. Cut him, put him on the practice squad. Lucky Jackson, Thayer Thomas. I think the back end, I'm not worried about them keeping 5 or 6. When you look at the actual players, you have your top 3 that's all set. Jalen Naylor was not at practice again today, but let's just assume that he's okay. We'll get an update at some point, I think tomorrow, from Kevin O'Connell, but let's just assume that there's nothing severely wrong with Jalen Naylor. And so he's wide receiver 4. If it's Brandon Powell, Jalen Reagor, Tristan Jackson, one of those guys, I mean, you're kind of talking about, 50 cents or a half dollar there with those different depth wide receivers. And you can put guys on the practice squad. It'll be fine. I'm not concerned if it's 5 or 6, but you don't really want to lose a young player you just drafted to somebody picking him up and making him, their backup or putting them on the active roster. That's probably something you don't want to do. Did I actually write down the depth chart on day one to track it going forward? Yes, I do have it. Yeah, I wrote it down in a Google Doc. Yep. I mean, so far nothing has changed over the first 3 days because it's only been 2 real practices. But there are things. I'll give you a few things that I'm watching as far as the depth chart. Let me take a look at my file here. So I'm keeping an eye on well, obviously the wide receiver depth chart, and that's a little bit hard because I think I know the top 4, but the guys rotate so much that I don't know who they think wide receiver 5 is. I've got it as either Tristan Jackson or Brandon Powell, but I don't really know right now because they mix and match so much. It's not super obvious. So wide receiver and how that plays out for the depth chart, I'm very interested in. It appears that Kene Nwangwu is RB2. That one I'm going to watch closely with Ty Chandler and Dwayne McBride. Kind of interested, just going position by position, in if Nick Muse makes things interesting with Johnny Munt. I don't think so, because Nick Muse can be cut, put on the practice squad, but maybe. Nothing really on the offensive line. Oh, and John had asked what the offensive line looks like. You're just going to have to give me time on that one because it's so hard to tell without pads. I mean, yeah, as Alexander said in the comments, it's just like they're a unit that seemed to like each other last year and play well at times together with just some weak links. And I would be an unbelievable football analyst if I could watch them without pads and say, you know what? Ed Ingram's going to cut down that sacks against total by 7. I know you're not asking for that. I'm just saying it's really, really hard to see without pads. When the defensive linemen start going, though, when they get the pads on and they start going, and you know what? Actually, here's going to be a real help for the offensive linemen is the joint practices. What do they look like in the joint practices? Now that's going to be something we can tell. Actually, with the offensive line, Oli Udoh playing for Brian O'Neill. When does Brian O'Neill come back? And they also just signed Bobby Evans, who's a veteran, and he's been a backup. I guess I wondered if Blake Brandel would be in instead of Oli Udoh. It just seems like Udoh is kind of their guy for the swing tackle. On the defensive line, James Lynch was getting some reps with the first team, just kind of mixing in. But really the thing that stuck out to me is Kairos Tonga has been taking almost all the first team reps. So that one, and no, Ed Ingram has not stepped on Kirk's foot. Thank you for that though. But Kairos Tonga has just been the guy in the middle. He's been the nose tackle, and I think that's going to stay that way. He really impressed them last year. So it's been, typical in the 3-4 base, Dean Lowry and Harrison Phillips and DJ Wanham on the outside. I guess the Pat Jones thing is interesting to me if he can make some noise there. Ross Blacklock, Jonathan Bullard, any of these guys do something. You're asking about Jaquelin Roy. I had Jaquelin Roy as being on the third team, but I'll have to check again tomorrow if that changed from the first day. And what they do with Davenport, we'll kind of find out. Like if Davenport is going to just be always on the outside or if he's going to move inside. Sometimes he does. Sometimes he does on those like third down type of situations, move to the inside. So anyway, these are just some of the things that I'll be watching. Oh, I know one I was going to bring up. Ivan Pace has been entirely with the second team. Ivan Pace Jr. This is a guy that all of you loved as a UDFA, and he is very fast, has great movement. How does he adapt when things are really flying around? And how does he play in those preseason games? Asazia Tomo's been third team, but they do rotate, and this is why it's hard sometimes. They do rotate third and into the second team at times. And then with the cornerbacks, this is easy. Jawan Williams. Does Jawan Williams start at outside corner? And Mekhi Blackman and Andrew Booth Jr., they're the backups? Or is it a Jesse Davis type of, hey, there's a veteran, you guys have to come beat him? I tend to think that that's it, but maybe not, because Jawan Williams has looked pretty good in his first couple days of camp. And then, of course, you guys know the safety one. We've talked enough about where Lewis Seen stands at the moment. From I Shot You 99, is Flores enough to make the defense at least average with the current group? Do you think that we'll likely see the same holes as last year? You will probably see a lot of the same holes, but sort of for different reasons. Does that make sense? Like last year, I think that they had the talent to have a good defense, and they just didn't because they were coached poorly and because their weak links were really bad. But when I look at last year, even Chandon Sullivan, it was his worst career year. Eric Kendricks, it was one of, if not his worst career year. These were guys who had been better in the past for the most part. Peterson was good. Za'Darius was good. Danielle Hunter, but you're really not doing anything with Za'Darius and Danielle Hunter. They just rush the passer. Anybody could coach those two guys, but the things that were really super coachable, the secondary, the scheme, the aggressiveness, how much you're changing things up, they were atrocious with Ed Donatel. Flores could be a lot better, almost guaranteed to be a lot better. And yet there's still going to be, because of the weak links that they have, moments. Only without pads, which I feel like I'm just saying over and over again because I always want to put that little asterisk there. But I just feel like it will be better based on how it looks so far. That the secondary specifically, this is a guy who cut his teeth with linebackers and with defensive backs and was really excellent in Miami at using those guys in a lot of different ways. When you go look at their usage, Brandon Jones, Eric Rowe, the guys that he had in Miami and the way he used them aggressively, blitzing guys, playing three safeties, the Metellus factor, getting him on the field. Like if Metellus is good, why aren't you getting him on the field? So that's part of it as well. I guess I think that there's a lot of factors that go into whether they're actually better, and there will be weaknesses, but also I think that they definitely should be better. So anyway, let's see. Is it just me or I keep seeing Booth giving up highlight Twitter videos? Yeah, I mean, he's playing with the second team. It's him and Mekhi Blackman with the second team. And we'll see if one of those guys makes some noise. Those two guys, I think, are really going to have to show up in the preseason games and in those joint practices. DeAndre Hopkins is coming. Like, will they get a chance to match up against him a little bit? We'll see. So anyway, I sat down with Matt Daniels today, and I technologically am hoping this works to bring this to you. It's a bit of a long video, about a 15-minute sit down with the Viking special teams coordinator. Really interesting discussion, his aspirations to be a head coach, how you evaluate analytically, how he's trying to become more of a Minnesotan, all those types of things. So let me know in the comments if there's any issues like audio wise with being able to hear it okay, or somebody just give me a thumbs up to let me know that you can hear it okay as we're doing this live, because I'm kind of trying to do it for the first time this way. So let me know on that. And otherwise, thanks so much, guys, and enjoy this conversation with Viking special teams coordinator Matt Daniels. Welcome back to the show for a return appearance, which must mean that he liked his last appearance or didn't remember it. Viking special teams coordinator Matt Daniels. What is up, man? How are you?
Man, I'm doing great. It's cooking out here right now in Minneapolis, but I mean, where's it not cooking at, right? That's all part of training camp. Beautiful green grass. Excited to get the fans out tomorrow for our first kind of open practice. Bring some good energy out here. Things are going really well. I'm excited about the roster that we put together. Excited about the rookies. Really looking forward to the season.
It does feel great to be back. We were just talking about, things we did this summer or whatever else, but this is like back to school, and it's a great feeling to be out here. And when it cools off a little bit, it'll be a little more comfortable for us. But there's a lot of things that came to mind to talk with you about. There's new kickoff rules, everything else. We got a whole new roster, all sorts of people to work with. But I did want to start with just you. I mean, last year you arrived here, kind of first time being a Minnesotan and so forth. And last training camp, you went through some things that were difficult for you, and it was very chaotic, I'm sure, and very challenging. So I guess when you sort of reflect on arriving here, everything you went through with your father passing away, what was that like for you last year to kind of go through that as you were taking a new job and a big step in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing is it was ups and downs. It was a roller coaster of emotions for sure. I look at how the season went, and all I can say is that I had unbelievable support system to help me get through it. Some days were great, some days were not so good. But I had players that leaned on me. They always checked on me, genuine about it. And with that, I was able to kind of keep a good steady head and stay stable and really continue to pour my all into these players because, that's where I find joy and that's where my passion lies really is pouring into all of these players. And so, you look at the year, there were some things that we did really, really well. I thought we implemented some really good schematics. I thought we kind of switched up some things on the back end that really tailored more towards our players' strengths. And with that, I like to build on getting better with in-game adjustments, being a better gatherer of information in the game to give my players a little bit more information so that they do find a way to kind of have those advantageous positions that they're going to be in so they can win those matchups.
Yeah, it's interesting your approach because I feel like you kind of cover both bases of the connection with players and leadership, but also you're kind of an analytics nerd as well.
Absolutely, gotta be.
Let's talk about both of those things. So it really stood out to me last year the way that you connected with players, whether it was the special teams hats or just guys would talk about that quite a bit. And I thought that there was more energy for special teams and for those guys and more buy-in and sort of ownership over that role rather than I'm just doing this so I could get something else from that last year than I think I've ever seen covering the team. I wonder how you achieve that, like as a leader, to get that sort of buy-in in a role where clearly that players are trying to use it to slingshot them to the next level.
Absolutely. You mentioned two words really that stuck out to me. You said getting players to buy in. And I actually talked about this on my interview process because when you're a new coach coming in or a new staff coming in, there is a level of belief versus buy-in that goes with the players. And so what happens is that there's, Zimmer was here for 8 years, I want to say it was. And so a lot of the players were coached by the same coaches and learned basically these techniques and fundamentals that work for them. And so here I come in trying to introduce new techniques, new fundamentals, new schematics. And so what happens is that there's a little bit of, well, this right here has been working for me for so long. Why should I switch over to this? And so you have to build a good relationship with the players and get them to believe in what you're coaching first, right? And so the buy-in aspect is that once we all put it all together, it goes out on the field, and they realize that what we're teaching and coaching works. Well, now you get them to buy in. Now you get them to believe exactly what we're coaching, what we're talking about. And, I'm able to do that just by being my authentic self at the end of the day. And players can see, when you're code switching, when you're not being consistent in who you are. And I tell them all the time that they need to show up in this building and be whoever they are, whoever you are, be that person. I don't need you to show up in the classroom and be this way, and then on the field you're this way. Whoever you are, be that way the entire time. And if you do that, and you're having a bad day or something might be a little bit off, I'm gonna know that because you are who you are. And through that, that's how you build good relationship with players. And I'm able to do that by just being transparent with them, being open with them, doing a great job of communicating with them. And through that, you build just great relationships just by being your authentic self.
Something I noticed about you from really day one is kind of the presence you have. Sometimes it's describing Jalen Reagor's body, or sometimes no, I'm just kidding you.
I love it.
You brought it up first in the press conference, so I feel like we can talk about it. But no, I mean there's something natural from coaches that they have that is a sort of a presence, and you have a way of communicating, I think, really well, even with us, like explaining special teams stuff to the media to the point where we really have an understanding of it. Was that something that you develop as a coach? Like, do you learn to do that better? Do you think about it? Do you focus on it? Do you read books on it? Like, what is it that you do to kind of become better at that?
It's really a combination of all those things, man. You look at it. I mean, I read a lot. I've worked with and collaborated with a lot of great coaches throughout my playing career as well as my coaching career. You look at it, I got John Bones Fossil, who really was a mentor to me, an unbelievable coach, he does an unbelievable job of really instilling culture, not only in the unit, but the entire team itself.
One of the special teams GOATs.
Yeah, special team GOAT. And so, I played for him, and I worked under him as well, and so I took a lot from him. Took a lot from Sean McVay and how he communicated. I got my first opportunity to become a graduate assistant at the University of Colorado by a guy by the name of Mike McIntyre, who's the head coach of Colorado now, the head coach over at FIU. And so with that, I'm just a sponge and all of that. But, quite frankly, I've always been this energetic, very outgoing, positive guy. I'm always looking to find ways to basically uplift players and be a servant leader at the end of the day. And that's just kind of who I am. That's something that my father really instilled in me at a very young age. And with that, I just take it and I just run with it. And, again, just be my authentic self at the end of the day. And so it's found a way to work out for me. A lot of books really helped me out just in terms of how do you lead? What does leadership look like? How do you build culture? How do you connect with people? And so, through all of that knowledge and working with some really great people, I'm able to put it all together.
It kind of reminds me of people watching the Netflix documentary and learning all the things that are, like the iceberg, sort of where you see the tip of the iceberg, which is Kirk playing on Sunday, but all the other stuff goes into it.
I haven't seen Quarterback.
Okay, well, they should. You know what it is, though.
I know exactly
you know what I'm saying.
Is it pretty good?
It is good,
okay,
yeah. I mean, it's NFL films,
yeah,
man.
I mean, awesome.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But they show so much more behind the scenes of what goes into playing quarterback, which I'm sure applies to every part of being at this level in the NFL. There's one more sort of leadership-ish thing that I wanted to talk about was you attended an event this offseason for black coaches to get to know owners of NFL teams, executives, and things like that. And I got to be honest, I'm a little conflicted only because – I think you shouldn't have to do that.
Right.
Right.
Like it's a force, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
It should be just look at this coaching staff. We have Brian Flores. Keenan McCardle is maybe the best wide receivers coach in the league if you look at the production.
No question.
And then here's yourself. And it's everybody else doesn't have to do this.
Right.
So there was a part of me that was sort of cynical about that.
I
but
can totally see that.
Also an opportunity for you. And I think that you have a vibe of someone who can climb a ladder and be that. So that's a goal of yours. I guess, how do you see that journey of kind of trying to achieve that goal of becoming a head coach someday?
Yeah, that's and I think the Accelerator program is a great first step in that. And you bring up a great point. Why is it that we have to have these type of programs? But that's just the nature of the world that we're in, and how it goes about it. But I'm so thankful to have been in that Accelerator program and sit down and meet one-on-one with these owners and talk about what the hiring process looks like. What exactly is it you're looking for in a head coach? Is it certain qualities that stand out to you, or is it a production-based business, or is it this guy is a right fit business? And so you kind of get a combination of answers, and but you get a great understanding of what the process is like, what they're looking for. And so with that, I just looked to build off of it. But for me, special team coaches don't really get a true look or interviews. And it's kind of like, why is that the case? Especially considering no one speaks or talks to the entire team more than the special team coach outside of the head coach.
Right.
No one spends more time with the entire roster than the special teams coach. And so you look at it, I'm building relationships with Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins, Brian O'Neill, Marcus Davenport, and so on and on and on and on. And so you look at it, and for me, at the end of the day, I always say you have to be so good that they can't deny you. And so that's from a production standpoint, but that's also from a leadership standpoint, that we've been discussing as well. And so with that, if you're able to tie the production and put it together with a good image, good leadership, excellent communicator, know how to motivate and know how to lead, man, well, hopefully you like the end result.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I think it was great for you, to meet all those people and get that opportunity.
Absolutely.
It's just the what Brian Flores has gone through even is a good example of how it has been much more difficult for black coaches to get opportunities, and I would like to see that change. Let's talk about the nerdy parts, though, because you were bringing up at the podium the analytics, and this is something that I am very intrigued by and always have been with football. But it's, studying offense, defense, and special teams. It feels like, to me, it's a little harder to pin down some of the stuff. How does one use numbers? It doesn't even have to be like analytics, but just data in general to evaluate the different elements of special teams.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times the breakdown is, I don't want to talk too much about it.
Of course.
But you can kind of look at explosives. right? What does an explosive return game look like? What is the box count? What type of kick returns really hit home last year? Was it a sideline? Was it a middle? Was it a middle bounce? Was it more single blocks taking place, or were there more double teams taking place? And so with that, you're able to gather all of that data analytics and kind of figure out, well, what's really working and what's not, what needs to get thrown out, and what do you need to emphasize a little bit more. And you can even kind of take it to another level in what type of personnel is out there on the field, right? So you're looking at it from a personnel standpoint. Where is it the most productive kickoff team have bigger bodies out there? Is it more linebackers out there? Is it more speed players out there? And so with that, you're able to kind of compile all the data, put it together. But obviously, you want to use the numbers to make sure that it's a good personnel and scheme fit as well.
Right.
Right? Because, the numbers might say something, but you might look at it and say, well, I only have 4 linebackers on the roster, but it says that you need about 6 linebackers on the kickoff team for it to have huge success. And so you try to find a way to kind of put the two together that works well for your roster, but also your scheme, so you're not getting too much outside of yourself.
You had kind of a creative approach to things last year, kind of the pop-up kickoff, I thought was pretty successful. I don't know how your data said, but just from my eye, it looked pretty successful.
For sure.
When you have Kene Nwangwu, you should return it more than if you don't have Kene Nwangwu returning it, right? You would probably guess that I can't stand the fact that they could do the fair catch thing and everything else. But I think that there's some element of special teams coaches that from head coaches, they just get it on the fairway. Like don't be Bryson DeChambeau swinging out of your shoes trying to hit the home runs. How do you balance wanting to make sure that there aren't mistakes or you're too risky, but also wanting to use your creativity and data and things like that to be aggressive as a special teams coach?
That's a great question, and I tell the guys this all the time, and I tell KO this as well, is that our thought process is, and my thought process is a simple approach with an aggressive mindset. And so you go about it. Obviously, the flow of the game is going to take place. You have to take in counter, what's the swing of it, what the momentum look like, what's the score. And so you want to, we like to consider ourselves, especially because we be situational masters. And so you have to have an understanding of what the game flow is like. But with that, we're always on the attack, and that's kind of just a part of our football philosophy overall as an entire team. And so with that, KO understands that we're going to be aggressive. That's kind of something personality of what our special teams unit is that we're always going to be in attack. We're never really kind of sitting on our heels. And, we want to be the dictators, and we want to be the ones you have to react off of us, and we're not reacting off of you.
Yeah, people on the show know that I'm a huge fan of the game of chess, and
I love chess.
There's a big, kind of thing with that of, do I attack? Do I, try to, do risky things?
Yes.
But you can get burned on it, and so you're always in your mind trying to, when you're formulating your plans, how far can I push it?
Right.
And I think that you kind of go through that same thing all the time.
Absolutely. And, I might have got caught up a couple times last year with some probably too aggressive calls, and, but that's all a part of the learning process. And so, you look to build off of it, find ways to get better from it, and, push forward.
You a good chess player?
I'm a pretty good chess player.
Oh, yeah?
Pretty good chess player, yeah.
Okay, well, how would you evaluate yourself?
I would say I am obviously – in chess, you want to always be kind of thinking about the next step.
Right. The calculation.
Yeah, the calculation of it, But I'm a guy, I like to move my queen around a little bit.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll leave my king open, for the taking. But then, realize, oh, shit, it's a trap.
Yes.
I would like to think I'm an aggressive chess player, though.
Very interesting. All right, last thing for you, because I know you have to go, coach football. You were able to spend some time in Minnesota.
Yes.
What is the most Minnesotan thing? Because I'm not from here originally either. I moved here, and it's a little different.
It is a little different.
I came from the East.
Okay.
Very different in the East. What's the most Minnesotan thing you've sort of come across or adopted? Driving the speed limit?
Oh yeah, that's one of the things. But the speed limit, I don't think I've come across a speed that's over 70. I think most of them is 55, 65.
And people will go 55 in the left lane.
Yes. And and it's very disturbing for me a little bit, I must say.
It took me 3 years
Yes.
to understand.
It's-
Like, they're not going to move over because they think they're fine doing this.
No, they're not. But I do love. I got to shout out. I love Sebastian Joe's. I don't know if you've had it.
I haven't.
Oh, you
yeah.
haven't?
No.
Oh
no.
man, I love Sebastian.
Big ice cream
Joe's.
fan,
Oh,
though.
I love a big ice cream fan.
As you can tell.
Yes, big. Yeah, Sebastian Joe's is really good. You know, I've really come accustomed. I love a good walleye fish sandwich.
Really? Okay.
Oh, man.
All right.
I love a good walleye fish sandwich.
I have not adapted to the lake fish.
Yeah, lake fish. Yeah, I have.
Okay,
I'm a
that's
big
good.
fan of it. Big
Good.
fan of it. Big fan of it.
What I didn't know when I moved here was how many good golf courses there are. It's unbelievable.
Yes. I'm a
You'd
big
think
golfer.
this place would just be frozen and they couldn't do anything, but it's
and
amazing.
It's unfortunate that it's only open, for 5 months a year.
But that's your excuse for not being good.
That's very true.
There you
Yeah,
go.
it's like-
Matt Daniels, this is the best. I'm really happy we could do this, and I wish you the best for the rest of camp, and we'll connect another time, man.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
for doing
For
it again.
sure. Appreciate you, Matt.